We got some college ball for you with Danny Cannell coming up. And also story time, like a horse on a pony or a pony on a horse. Rob Gronkowski, Julian Edelman have a new podcast coming up. So we're going to catch up with those guys. And I also want to talk about transferring quarterbacks and why Thursday Night Football was another example of why it's actually a good thing. And we've got Life Advice and the Alliance. Fired up. Rob Gronkowski, Julian Edelman, Dudes on Dudes, the new podcast. It's out now, out Thursdays during the NFL season. How did this start?
I think it started with Rob just coming on Games with Names, and we enjoyed doing it so much. And we started talking about certain guys that we were highlighting in the Games with Names pod. And we're like, we should just join up and make a podcast of us talking about guys that we marvel at.
That is basically how it happened. I mean, I went on Games with Names about 4 times, and Julian and we had some great chemistry doing it as well. And I really enjoyed just showing up to Julian's house and just podcasting with him. The setup that he had, the team that he has around him as well. They were very sufficient, very organized, and I appreciated that. And we just came about then. Hey, we got chemistry. His team talked about it. Hey, you guys should start a podcast. We're always BSing around too, watching games. I'm always at Julian's house on Saturday watching college football games. Sunday night football, after I'm done with Fox, I go to his house. We watch the Sunday night game, and we're always breaking down players, evaluating them, talking about what type of game that they have. So this just came about just going to his house in LA every week while I was there for Fox already. So it's a really cool concept as well.
It's fun. You know, it's kind of what you did in the locker room. And it's been so fun to work with Rob again. We've kind of set up this we've taken the template of how it was in New England and then like relaxed it with our operations of how we do our work. So like we have our red schedule, like in New England, when you go out, you get a red schedule every day. We have like our red schedule printout we have the people doing that. And, you know, just kind of, it was fun to get to have the workplace environment with Rob. I mean, we worked together for 10 years, like every day, like where you see each other at the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows. And then you have to go out and you have to perform and do something. I honestly just missed working with Rob, and then we found this, and it's been fun.
I saw the Randy Moss clip, and I loved it. I loved the idea of Randy Moss in the locker room, because I think like Mike Vick always had that with guys when he would show up to a team. Like I was talking to Willie Colon about it, and you're like, oh my God, we got Mike Vick. Like these superheroes that you saw when you were younger, and now he's your teammate. Was there anyone else for you, Rob, that you were in awe of when you started? Like it was hard. You were weird about it in the beginning.
Well, this guy is probably not talked about a lot, and he actually was a former teammate of Mike Vick, because you just brought up Mike Vick as well, and it was Algie Crumpler. I mean, just the way, you know, that guy could handle a blocking scheme, just the way that he could just take a defensive end and just move him was incredible, and just the knowledge of the game that he had as well was just spectacular. And I know Algie Crumpler and Julian used to go to the cigar bar back in the day too and smoke a cigar together, which was the most outrageous thing I heard when you told me about that, Julian.
I was 22 years old, and we used to go to the Cigar Master in Providence, Rhode Island. Algie used to go there every Monday night to smoke a cigar. I didn't smoke cigars at all, but I just wanted to hang out with Algie Crumpler because I remember throwing to him in Madden back in that like 2000 Madden with Vic and Algie, you know, where they throw the post and you have the Inco with Algie Crumpler. And I was such a fan of him too. Rob was, we were teammates, and he goes, "Yeah, I go to the Cigar Masters. You want to come?" I'm like, "Sure, definitely." Took down like 2 cigars, almost coughed up a lung, but got to hang out and watch ball with freaking Algie Crumpler. It was so fun.
I don't know if you know this, Gronk, and I didn't tell Jules this either, but the Aaron Hernandez TV show, I read for the part of Rob Gronkowski because when I moved out to LA, I wanted to try to expand my base of abilities. And so I read for the part of Gronk, and they were like, hold on, hold on. I was like, no, I have it. I was like, I understand him better than most actors would. And they were like, you're too old and you're bald. And I was like, a wig, and we can put a little dye in there. I was like, you're just going to get some young guy and he's not going to get it right. And then they were like, no. And so they said, maybe if Tom Tupa comes to visit the facility, you could be Tom Tupa or something. Have you seen the guy playing Gronk yet? Because I think I would have nailed it.
Well, I think Russillo, you would have nailed it as well. But like they said, you're just maybe a tad bit or tad bit older than me, but you do look young still. I'm not going to lie. You really do.
Thank you.
You just need some hair, and a wig would have did you justify you playing the role as well. But Leith Walchberger or Waltzchild. He's a good friend of mine. I've never been able to say his last name. I actually never called him by his
Very
last
close.
name before. But Leith is his name. He's been a good friend of mine for quite some time. And so he knows me personally. And that's why he was able to nail the laugh down to a science and then be able to over exaggerate playing me as well, which was perfect for the show, because the show kind of is, I would say, more of like a, how do you describe the show? I mean, more of like a Hallmarky type show, if that's the way I'm going with it. Yeah. Right? Yeah. What you say that?
That's what you're trying to say. You're just trying to say terrible.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's so funny. He got to be bigger, though. The fun thing about Gronk, when he walked into the locker room and he acted the way Rob acted, it was almost funny because it was coming from like a 7'2" giant. Yeah. That's like the biggest, funniest part about it, is where you'd see this big ass dude with like 3-inch abs of a 6-pack, and like he'd come in like Goofy, 3-inch abs each.
Are they still there, Gronk?
That's the only thing that you get into these movies. Just like the Hulu one with Tommy and Pam, where Tommy Lee is supposed to be tall, long. Like it just doesn't work for me. There's only one Gronk, and then Hernandez. I don't know. They can't. Why you would think that they wouldn't do combine stuff. Like, have you seen those scenes?
Yeah. I mean, look, you know how hard it is to find an actor who also is going to be able to run crisp routes.
Well, can we get a stuntman? Can we get a stuntman?
They should have had stuntmen. You're right on that.
We need a stuntman.
Did you see your explosiveness in your play today? That's all over the place, Julian. There's a clip now of Julian going viral, and he literally catches it. He looks like a 80-year-old man coming out of a wheelchair with his explosiveness, and gained like a half yard before he got tackled. And then he hurt Hernandez's ankle in that play as well. So good job, Julian. Good job. Wow, I didn't know you were that slow. Wow,
so slot routes.
You had a great career for how slow you were, buddy.
That's Hollywood for you, you know.
I thought Belichick was good when they drafted him. It was incredible. He's like, dude, tight ends. Never done that before. I was dying. I was dying at the Belichick. They had the face down, the sweatshirt. It just must be hilarious for you guys. I mean, I know it's a serious topic and everything, but we're not going to go there. It must be ridiculous for you guys watching the clips of this.
Hey Rob, can you see Coach Belichick doing air guitar and air drums to Bon Jovi while drafting you and Aaron?
I mean, he should have been for sure, because that was a great pick by him by taking me in the second round. It definitely deserves some air drums right there. But no, I can't see him doing that at all. I can see him drafting, and they hit it right on a little bit, you know, two tight ends or whatever he was saying, and I can see him just sitting back in the chair like these mother effers. They better work out. They better get the job done. I can't see him doing the guitar part though.
All right, give me some other, because we used to do this. Like, guys are like, if you could trade with anybody, who would you trade with? And you were like, Ryan Gosling would be really high. He would be really high if we were doing dudes on dudes content here. If there is anyone athletically for you, Jules, you had a great career. So like maybe you'll just pick, a Jerry Rice type, but I don't know. I don't want to take your answer away from you.
Any guy that I would like to pick that I wouldn't want to be anyone else. I like my career, but there's some guys that like, I mean, that's a tough one. I would say who would I pick?
Don Beebe?
Huh?
Don Beebe?
Nah, not a Don Beebe. Maybe a Largent back in the day, become a governor or something.
There you go. His poster was sick. I remember I had that. I didn't even really know that much about him. It was just like, how's this guy this good?
I mean, the guy could run go routes, and he was like 5'8", and he could play on the outside. And I just remember, I haven't watched like crazy amounts of film on him, but anytime a guy our size goes aerial on sidelines, it doesn't matter what era it is, and comes down with balls. It seemed like he did that a lot. And then the kind of guy he is off the field, I would love to be just a stand-up human being.
Wow, that was like a great answer. It was both on and off the field.
I know who I would work out with.
Okay.
He just recently retired, actually. Aaron Donald, man. He's an absolute savage and beast. And if you ever seen his workouts, he's like combating versus knives. Like someone's trying to stab him and he's got to go around him and, work on his hand placement. And that's kind of what made him a great defensive player. But overall, that guy's strength and speed and explosiveness for his size, that's someone who I would want to train with.
If you could dodge knives, you could dodge blockers.
Exactly. There we go.
You can dodge knives, you can dodge blockers.
There we go. That's our new quota now for Dudes on Dudes, Julian.
T-shirt. That should be the first T-shirt. He's shocking in that the first time I ever stood next to him, you're like, I can't believe this is the most dominant player in the league on that side of the ball. And like during his prime, it was just stupid. Like I used to never watch defensive tackles. You just, as somebody who didn't play, I probably get stuck watching the ball a little bit too much. And then there'd just be games of the Rams that were like, just watch him. 3 guys wrecking
Did you
everything.
think he was small or what?
I think just because of what I'd seen on TV, I thought he was going to be massive. And it's not that he's small, but everything about him is a muscle. Like everything is muscle, and it's not just weight room strength. You can just tell, like, there's different. It's always crazy to me to think at the level that you guys played at that there'll always be a couple guys that make everybody else feel weak, right? 1,000+ NFL players, and there's a couple guys running around on Sundays that everybody's like, that guy makes me feel like a little kid. Like the Larry Allen stuff back in the day with the Cowboys that aren't, that Donald was that dude for as long as he was.
No, I'm not putting in the same category, but we just talked about him on one of our Dudes on Dudes episodes. James Harrison was kind of like that, where he's not like a huge guy, but you can see how wide he is. And like when you see like veins in his like calves and stuff, you're like, oh my God, this guy's a real wrecker.
I feel like what makes them such great defensive players as well is because they already have that leverage built in, and the game of football is all about leverage. So they're shorter and they can just burst right off the ball, and your body kind of functions better. It kind of, it's like a machine, and the machinery works in peace with each other when you're shorter as well. I'm a tall guy. I mean, there's a lot more mass and a lot more movement that has to be made in order for me to get going. When you're shorter, it's more of like a bam, bang, bang type movement. And therefore you can have better explosiveness and be able to get around a defender better because there's not much, as much body part and mass that you got to move when you're taller. So it's kind of an advantage for those guys, being a little bit shorter than being so stocky. You can just get under a defender and, and move them.
Shorter drive train.
There we go. There we go.
That's what we're looking for.
That's what we're looking for.
There you go, Jules. That's why we're podcasters together.
So
Julian, finish it for me. Thank you, Jules. That's why we're together in business now.
Sometimes the drivetrain on those things are they're so big that they're powerful, but there's a lot of chance for fault in there.
All right. I was wondering this because I always felt like as an astute watcher of number 12 back there for 20 years because I was living in Boston the first half of his career. And so it was just, I grew up a Pats fan and, I could always kind of tell, like I could tell it was like this crazy thing of watching on TV, the way he would step into a throw and it's like, okay, he has it. Like he has it. Where you're watching other guys on Sunday and they just release it and you're like, I wonder where this is going to go. You could tell with certain ways he stepped into throws where it's like he has exactly what he wants. But the other thing I would notice is if there were receivers that maybe he didn't trust, he would throw the ball a certain way, like maybe lower in the end zone because he was afraid of it being tipped up in a pick. And then there'd be guys you could just tell, like, if there was a go route and he didn't make the play, then he was never going to get that ball thrown to him the rest of the game. Gronk's laughing right now with a huge smile on his face because he knows both of you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm curious about like the dynamic of the receiver because I think some receivers are like out of their minds. You both come in about the same time, like Jules just a year after Gronk, and it's still Brady prime. His run goes forever. Were there ever times where a new receiver would come back to the huddle and maybe say something to Tom, where you two would look at each other being like, that's not really how we operate here?
No shot.
Never happened.
I don't really, I don't remember that at all. Everyone, when you stepped in the huddle, like if it was a new player from another team, they were just like, oh my God, this is how teams practice. This is how you guys do things. If it was a young football player, in our generation, we'd all been watching Tom since we were kids, like in 8th grade, 7th grade, and then you get to go on the field with them. No one's saying anything to them. So there really wasn't any of that, like, give me the ball in the huddle. What do you think, Rob?
No, there's no one out there saying, give me the ball in the huddle. But I understand what you're saying. You wouldn't get in the huddle from the beginning if he didn't trust you. And the way to gain his trust was just even throwing and running the right route and just 7-on-7 and pat and go. He was always making sure that you were already doing the right thing right from the get-go. And he could just tell because Tom knows talent. He can tell, who has talent. He can tell who can get the job done in literally the first couple minutes that he's on the field with them. So you're not even going to be in that huddle arranged in it if he doesn't even trust in you from the beginning. In order to get his trust, you got to show that you can go out there, compete. You got to go out there, be able to make plays, get open, and kind of do things the way that he wants them to get done as well, which were always the right way as well. He was basically another coach out there.
Yeah, you had to do it in practice. Like if you didn't do it in practice,
it's almost like a tryout. It was almost like a tryout for Sunday.
Every practice in New England was like a tryout. It didn't matter who you were. Like, yes, the more plays that you made, you'd have some room for error. But like when people talk about how did you gain Tom's trust, it was never about just gaining it. It was continually earning it every day, like at work. Even when it was like a blitz period or a 9-on-7 period for the offensive line, he'd take a lot of the receivers during that period and we'd go run on, plays and routes on script and he'd have his coaching points on it and he'd test you during that to see if you knew or you could take it. I mean, I remember when Rob and I would go run routes in the off season with them and we would do like a 2-minute drill, like style route. We do sets of 10 and we go up the field and everything would be verbal communication where he'd be saying like, all right, it's Army, right? Army. So that would change the personnel group, put me at a different position and put Rob at another position. And like, he'd call out the play. And then like in the middle of his drop, he'd be like, will weak safety, meaning like there's a blitz. So, you have a side adjustment. He'd test guys so much like in the prep just to get that confidence in a guy that, like Rob said, if he's not in the huddle, like if you were in the huddle, you had to earn to be in that huddle.
And also, there's one thing that Tom can read better than anyone else out there in the game of football. And I would say this has not been talked about ever, but I just thought about it, is that he can read someone's body language better than anyone else out there. Like, he knew when to throw me the ball. He knew when I was up and ready to go and I was fully activated. He could tell when Julian was being like a little beat down or rugged down, and he he wasn't going to get open that play and just won't even look his way then and would find the guy that's all sprunk and ready to go coming out of the huddle. He could read someone that well. And Julian, I feel like you would agree with me on that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like, it goes into that prep. Like, he knew when I would drop my weight, how I drop my weight, how I would break, and that came through the constant reps in practice. And also matchups. I would 100% agree with that with Rob, that Tom knew your body language, because the one thing he would always tell a young receiver. What is it, Rob? Route running.
Be decisive.
Be decisive. You just have to be decisive. If it's a zone, sit and tell me it's a zone. You're my eyes on the field, so don't be fluttering up the field if it's a zone play. Sit and be in the zone. Be decisive. It's man. Put your foot in the ground and run away from the guy. He was always so about decisiveness. I used to get so mad about it.
Hey, Russillo, are you getting a little hard thinking about all this football talk with Brady?
It moved a little. Look, man, I could talk about this stuff. I could talk about this stuff all day because, sometimes I even feel guilty. I have you guys on. It's like, oh, tell me another Tom story. Tell me another Bill story. But you're part of this run where I don't even know if you can appreciate it as much as you do now while you're in it. You're young guys. You're like, this is how it works. And then you become friends with all these other players and you get to know all these other dudes. And you're just like, that's what you guys did. That's not what we did. And there's a reason for the sustained success. And so, maybe some of the audience is like, oh, you guys are telling Pat stories again. I can't get enough of it because I'm constantly fascinated about the process and the approach in leading these results. I mean, I don't know that you guys just sit around on the couch on Saturday and it's an awkward silence. And then Jules turns to Gronk and goes, hey, you know what? We were awesome. And then it's just, it's silence again. You just start laughing. But do you have moments as you've gotten older of going, holy shit, we did that. We were part of that.
I think, yeah, with the success that the Chiefs are having, it's a reminder of how hard it is.
Yeah, that's great.
You see them and their success. You sit there, you're like, man, this is a damn good football team. That's probably what they thought of us. Because you didn't really get to enjoy it during the time because, you go win a Super Bowl and you had to reinvent yourself that offseason. You had to work 10 times harder to get back to the next one. And watching the Chiefs go out and play and reinvent their team each year and see the struggles, not the struggles, but the learning of their team in the early part of the season. And then you can see them sharpen it. That familiarity reminds me that, man, it was pretty damn hard and pretty amazing. Or when you watch an old film or you go on NFL Network and the 28-3 or the Seattle Seahawks Super Bowls on, these comebacks in the fourth quarter, you're like, damn, how did we win those games? It was pretty freaking cool. That, you start to see that more the further you get you're out the door.
I appreciate it. Here's a little story. I was at my brother's house in Dallas a couple weeks ago. He's got 4 kids, and the youngest is 8 years old, and he YouTubed me. He's starting to figure it out. I played in the NFL. I was a little bit big time. His uncle was.
He must wonder, who is this guy?
Yeah.
He's okay, this makes sense.
So he put the AFC Championship game on from 2018 when we played in Kansas City and beat them. And we watched the final 8 minutes of the game, and I never appreciated that game as much as I did when I was just sitting there watching it with my nephew on the couch 3 weeks ago. And it made me understand how great we were. I mean, Julian, we had 4 3rd and 10s and a 4th down, and you had 3 across the middle, and Tom put it on you perfectly. And the guy was basically covering you, and he fit it right in that little tiny hole. And you making those catches on those 3rd downs made me appreciate you that much more. I mean, during the time I'm running a route, I really don't get to see what you're doing. I don't really get to see that you make that catch with the guy basically on your back, and then run through 2 tackles and get the first down, which was just incredible because we're on to the next play. And then after the game, we're on to the next game. So just to watch that game made me truly understand what type of a success that we had and how awesome we were. And I had a couple 3rd and 10s as well that I got a first down on, which was really cool too. It made my nephew proud, and I was proud that he was watching.
So funny though. So I think like a few months ago, Rob's been coming to the house a lot, and it's part of working. And my daughter Lily, she sees Rob, and I go, "Hey, Lily, you remember Rob? Because they haven't seen each other in a couple years. He was in Tampa, and she's coming in the locker room, and she goes, "Oh, nice to meet you, Rob." Like, you know him. Next day, I bring her to school. I go, "You don't remember Rob Gronkowski?" She goes, "That's Gronk." I'm like, "Yeah, it's Gronk. You said his name was Rob." It's so funny to hear the little kids, like your nephew. It was freaking. And she goes, "That's Gronk." Yeah, I was like, "That's Gronk." She goes, "Can he beat up the John Cena?" I was like, "Yeah, he could beat up the John Cena."
Oh, I could definitely beat up the John Cena 100%.
Yeah, I didn't even thought about that. That'd be a good little side. Like we used to do that back at ESPN where we look at an old roster and then I'd ask like Teddy Bruschi and be like, "Could you beat up this guy?" Like Bruschi was the wrong guy to pick because Bruschi was going to say he could beat up everybody. But then when you got Bruschi on one where he'd be like, "I don't know. And I was like, "Oh my God, Bruschi said he doesn't know about a guy,
Yes.
It wasn't as much fun as we did it with the quarterbacks, unless they were delusional. Look, I think the cool thing, and I've got one last thought here, and we'll finish up. But like what you were talking about, and what I've always admired about the great teams is football's so hard, right? It's hard for a million reasons. It's hard for a ton of obvious reasons. But I remember just certain games where I'll watch, and it's like all the series that don't go well, and you come back to the sideline, and you're like, "This sucks. We can't move the ball. We're not blocking. We're not getting open." And it's just a grind. But the great teams are still in the game. You know what I mean? The great teams, like some of these Mahomes games from last year, and for them to be undefeated this season, it's just that one, it's the confidence of already being successful, but to not give up mentally, right? To not give up mentally when the first 3 hours has been absolutely miserable. There's no other sport like that. And it's so cool to see the great teams. Like, how the hell are they still in this? And it's because when they come back out for the next series, they think they're going to win. They think they're going to win. And, it's just really rare. It's really because it's such a hard sport to just still be like, I'm having the best time and we still have a chance to be getting your ass kicked and nothing's worked for 3 hours.
Yeah, usually the best teams, that's like when I look at a contender, uh, it's usually the teams that have that mental toughness, doing what's best for the team when it may not be best for you. That was something that was always put in our hallway in New England, and a lot of these teams, like when you have a guy like Patrick Mahomes, we had Tom Brady, in their resume, they've been down and they've won it before. So like that one factor, you're down 10 points in the fourth quarter. Well, they can literally remember a time that they were down 10 points and they won. So like it's almost like that theory where the person who broke the mile, the 4-minute mile, the first time that anyone ever did that, a year later, 35 people did it because they knew it could be done. And it's kind of like that with the quarterback. If the quarterback thinks you can do it and is really confident in it, then everyone else is going to fall in line. And that's what you're seeing with Kansas City. And that's what we had in New England, where, our best player, our highest paid player always worked his balls off, always was the first one in, always held everyone accountable, was always great at the podium, was a guy that never pointed fingers, only pointed thumbs. And that's what you're seeing.
And,
All right, go ahead, Ron. Yeah.
Oh, and just a quick note as well, like what a team, makes a team great and makes a team a contender is that they're not beating themselves. There's many games won and lost in this league because the team beats themselves. They don't protect the ball. They make a mistake when the mistake should have never been made. They didn't properly manage the clock when it should have been managed, properly. So just those little tiny details of not letting the team win because you beat yourself is what makes a good team great.
You can't win till you keep from losing.
There you go.
Okay, last thing in the spirit of dudes on dudes, give me Gronk, give me an Edelman scouting report, but just based on vibes, not the player. Vibes, road trip in the locker room, and then Edelman can give it for Gronk.
Oh, like you're talking Edelman? Just I'm breaking down Edelman outside
Not
of
the player,
not the player,
vibes,
the guy,
right? Yeah,
the vibes.
Yeah.
I mean, oh man, well, he's definitely a dude's dude on top of it. He's in two different categories, but you got to figure it out into one category because you're not allowed to have two categories. He's a dude's dude. He's going on the road trip with you. He's sitting next to you. He's telling wonderful stories with you. He's going into the bar with you. That's a dude's dude, but he's also a dog because he's going to get down and dirty on the dance floor. He's going to go around and be fearless in whatever aspect you want him to be fearless in off the field. So I either choose Julian between being a dog off the field or being a dude's dude. And I feel like he leans more towards a dude's dude because he's always there for you when it comes down to it.
That was good. That was very thorough. Jules, I mean, the Gronk one, the line is he's never had a bad day. I still would be fascinated to spend the day with Gronk on the one bad day he has a year.
Hey, Julian, you know my dance moves are freaky now. Come on now. Come on.
So
the world knows it.
Dudes, our concept is we're going to talk about a guy or a girl or a dude for 10 minutes, and then we're going to determine what kind of dude they are. And there's a different sets of dudes. There's the freak, the stud, the dog, the whiz, and a dude's dude. For Gronk, on and off the field, he's just a freak. Just because, the first time I met him, I saw him. I've told this story a million times, but we're at this club bar.
It doesn't get old.
This bar club place called Splash, and this lady's walking with a platter of shrimp and fries, and you see this tall dude just out of nowhere take a handful of fries, slams them in his mouth, takes his shirt off, and you watch him do this dance thing that he does. And this was before anyone knew Gronk was Gronk, and you're like, this dude's crazy. He's a freak. Because you've never seen someone that tall or big move that way. So Rob is for sure a freak.
I would agree with freak. I want to let me know when you guys do the Fred Warner episode, because I think he checks a lot of boxes when you're talking about it. And look, man, you guys are great on Fox. You can see Jules with his stuff, games, names, and of course, Dudes on Dudes out every week, Thursdays during the NFL season. Gronk, we got to get you down to the beach and have you work out in the mass station. So let me know when we can line it up.
Yeah, let's do it, man. I heard you're a big guy in the weight room now lately. I heard you're being a dog lately in that weight room, putting some muscle mass on. You got a six-pack almost coming through.
I don't know. I think that's a compliment. I'm going to take it.
You are a Wizzo.
This is someone who's like innovative, that knows all the answers, that, he's pretty clutch.
Clutch. I like that.
Like the little kid in, you remember Little Giants? The little kid that came up with the annexation of Puerto Rico?
Yeah, wasn't he like really nerdy though?
Yeah, but he's still the whiz.
Gronk. Well, come on.
All right, you're not. You're a non-nerdy whiz.
I took my shirt off at the reunion for college, and guys were like, "What the fuck?" So I think I'm in the free category.
No, you're a whiz. You're a whiz.
That sucks. That sucks. All right, whatever. Look, you guys vote on it. I gotta take it. I'm a whiz.
You can work your way into the free category. We'll give you another year.
All right. You know what though? I don't know if I aspire to be a freak anymore, but we'll try. You guys are the best, man. I love catching up with you, and congrats on the new pod. All right.
Appreciate it, man.